So my name is Alex. I'm with Autodesk. I'm a product specialist predominantly for 3ds Max. I just started using Stingray as our real-time game engine offering 8 weeks ago, I believe, which is kind of exciting for myself because we released it in August, so it's a new product. And well, my background really is I started working with the 3D Studio DOS version a long time ago, and then in '99 I started working with real-time engines as well. First of all with Virtuals and a French company doing some well, early VR tries, I would say. Then I moved on to Quest 3D, later on Unity. I touched a little bit on Unreal, but yeah, to be honest, no, then Stingray arrived kind of early last year in terms of we acquired a new software called BitSquid. It's a Swedish game engine. And based on BitSquid, we now release the Stingray offering, as I said, in August. So I don't know just about this room. I'm going to show a little bit of 3ds Max to Stingray workflows, Revit to Stingray workflows. Who in this room is working with 3ds Max? There we go. It's amazing. That's great. Amazing, okay, right. So, and who's using Revit, maybe? Quite a few as well. That's okay, amazing. Very good. Yeah, let's I guess just get started. I put in virtual reality because that's kind of a buzzword really. But what Stingray is able to do, well, is true virtual reality. So we are supporting HTC Vive, we are supporting Oculus, whatever well, VR classes you want to put into it, that's going to be possible in a while, like soon, I don't know. But Oculus and HTC, they are supported by now. What we see here is just a video recording. Doesn't make a lot of sense without the goggles on, right? But it's a screen recording of those both eyes, and it's a fully kind of immersive experience as soon as you put these HTC Vive goggles on, because they can track you as you move in the room, like a 15 by 15 feet area where you can walk around. You have 2 devices that can be tracked as your hands, so you can point at certain things and interact with stuff. For example, here we can, I don't know, I believe we can point at that wall, for example, make that walling disappear, see what wiring is underneath, or change the furniture, all that, whatever you want to do, right? And as I said, it's making us a little bit nauseous, a little bit dizzy, just watching it on the projector. But as soon as you have the goggles on, it makes a lot more sense. Let me quickly check one more thing though, because I don't think we have sound attached at the moment. It might try to output via HDMI, so I'll quickly go here and say, oh, that's working. Maybe it doesn't output as soon as HDMI is connected because the audio is going into the VGA. Something like that. Oh, you know what? I'm going to test the HDMI output then. Amazing. Right. You know, sound doesn't matter too much, but this video had a little bit of sound, that's why I noticed. Yeah, just a little bit. Good. I have an agenda. In fact, I have 4 different projects that I want to briefly talk about in the next 50 minutes. So first of all, I would like to focus on this one over here. That's an EverMotion scene kind of originating inside of 3ds Max. I want to show you how to get your data over into Stingray. And then I would like to combine that with simulation data. So if you wanted to do wind simulation, for example, or like simulate how the air conditioning system would behave inside of a room or outside when wind is, you know, storming onto a building, stuff like that. The next one is this one over here. It's an edutainment project that I'm still working on. It's using a little bit of a reality capture. So I've been flying around with my drone, doing a little bit of photogrammetry and putting that into a low cartoony kind of world and look. And then we'll have a quick look at a technology preview that is called Project Expo. And Project Expo allows you to, well, with one click to prepare your data out of Revit and put it over into Stingray for real-time usage, right? And then in the end, we'll have a quick look at the HEC Vive project, which is that interior which we just saw on the video. All right, so let's get started. Who of you has had a look at Stingray already? One? Okay. So have you been using it or just some videos and? Okay. So if you first start Stingray, you're opposed to a number of templates that you can choose from. So if you wanted to have a third-person character walkthrough, you would probably choose this character template. If you wanted to have a drive through the city experience, then you could choose from that. Yes?
Is Stingray standalone or is it part of the packages?
Okay, so is Stingray standalone or is it part of the suites, basically? Currently it's a standalone offering. We are bundling it with one product, and that's Maya LT. So if you're coming from the indie development, game development side of things, then you might want to invest into Maya LT because it's the same price as Stingray, and actually Stingray is included in Maya LT. So that's just a tip right there. So usually I tend to start with a basic project. It gives you some basic layouts, some templates really to get you started on different devices, on iOS or Android or desktop, Windows desktop. And that's exactly what I've done here. And I changed the background a little bit. It's a little bit darker on the projector, as always, than it is on my screen. But this is how it is. I don't know who's experienced in Unity? A little bit. Other real-time engines? Unreal, maybe, someone? There we go. Okay, so for those who are familiar with Unity, it looks a little bit like Unity, right? It's an HTML5 framework. We have a very modular user interface which you can drag around and make, repurpose onto multiple screens if you wanted to do that. Let's go into 3ds Max. So here I have a scene that, again, originated as an Evermotion scene. It has some V-Ray materials on there, and also prepared some of the materials as DirectX shaders. So you can either prepare all your materials inside of 3ds Max, or just take whatever you have and send it over into Stingray and see what's happening. Because we are able to convert a lot of the materials, a lot of V-Ray basic materials, they are getting automatically converted. You don't start with a white your blank sheet of paper, really. So a lot of these V-Ray materials are getting converted into PBR shaders. That's a physically based shader inside of real-time engines. So let me select that building and send it over into Stingray. If you want to do that outside of, from within 3ds Max, you have the Stingray menu, which allows you to send your current selection. And the way that works, it automatically detects which Stingray project you currently are working out of, right? And then we can go into my, I don't know, some folder, and I'm just saying this is my building _ Dubai, and it's exporting. As soon as you do that, the first time you do that, basically, it's asking you, what do you want to do? Do you only want to import animations, for example? Do you only want to import materials? Or, like in that case, I'm going to import my mesh plus textures plus materials. Under the hood, we have an FBX workflow working, right? So whatever project or product you're working with, as long as it can output FBX, you can load that directly into Stingray as well without going through 3ds Max. All right. So within my project, let me see. Models exported. There it is. So here I have my building. Before I drag and drop it into my scene, I want to open it up in my so-called Unit Explorer. This is where I can quickly check the model itself. And also what I would like to do is I want to generate a second set of UVs. So think of a real-time engine, you want to have a high quality of high fidelity really if you walk through your scene with maybe global illumination, sunlight bouncing into your scene. distributing inside the rooms, etc. Stingray can do all of that for you. So it has 2 different light baking engines included. You don't have to bake down your V-Ray lights inside of 3ds Max. Well, you can do that. But you can also use the inbuilt light baking engine. What you need in order to bake down light, like shadows, reflection, whatever, what you need for that is a second set of UVs, right? So you have UV coordinates for your flooring, for your panels, for your carpet, and then you need a second one that is actually layouted as unique UVs so you can bake down the shadows. And that second set of unique UVs usually has to be created manually inside of 3ds Max or Maya. In that case, Stingray, that's what I just did. I selected everything and said, please generate that second set of UVs for me. And it does it automatically. So I don't have to, bother on that one too much inside of 3ds Max. All right, and then I can drag and drop that building into my scene, position at 0, 0, 0. I can fly in. So I have game-like controls, if you will. If I hold down the right mouse button, I can move around with WASD in my scene, which makes it quite easy to handle as soon as you're getting used to that kind of control scheme. So you can fly around in your building. You could, drag and drop different materials onto your surfaces. So let's say I have some steel here or steel there, a little bit of orange. That already looks a little bit nicer. And if you wanted to go in even further, then of course you can select the materials itself. And because it's a physically based material, you can change the roughness, the metalness of these materials, and define the overall look and behavior of these surfaces. Let's go a little bit further. Let's import the ground, which I've not yet exported out of 3ds Max. So I'm going to send over that selection, going back into my exported folder, saying this is my ground. There we go. It's again asking me, first time you want to import, what do you want to import? In that case, please just the mesh and the material. And as soon as that's there, I can basically select that ground, move it in here. Perfect. So we have one special behavior about that ground, because I have been preparing the material for that landscape inside of 3ds Max. So it is a DirectX shader already. And that DirectX shader, it's like super dark here. Let me see. Maybe like this. No. No. Okay, let me turn on some more light. That didn't change a lot, right? It's like a super green on my screen. Just imagine we have green grass, and I wanted to add some variety, adding some earth, for example, in between, right? What I can do, I can go into 3ds Max and I can use vertex paint to define the areas where I want to have grass and where I want to have earth, and blend between those. Before I do that, actually, I'm going to maximize that viewport, and I'm going to link these 2 viewports to each other. So that's more like a 2-screen, multiple-screen workflow. It's looking a little bit distorted right there. But again, you can just activate the camera live tracking, and then if I move around inside of 3ds Max, it's moving that camera inside of Stingray. If I go the other way around, I can move in Stingray smoothly, and it's going to update that camera into 3ds Max. You see, it's like a little bit stuttery, but at least as soon as I go in here and say, okay, there's the piano, and there's something wrong with the geometry, I am already at that point of view inside of 3ds Max, so I can change the geometry and just hit the update button and send those changes back into Stingray. The same behavior is for the landscape. So if I wanted to go into that landscape right there, and let's say I want to paint in some additional details, maybe a little bit bigger, and I'm going to make it a hard brush, right? So there we go. I've now painted, you can see it inside of 3ds Max, right? So I'm going to send these updates, these changes over into Stingray. by going into my Stingray menu, hitting update, and then it's, without asking me again, it's updating that stuff over into Stingray again, right? Don't mind the color, but it's actually updating the material. And it's the same for geometry changes. If you wanted to model, if you wanted to update a character animation workflow, you just hit the update button and it sends it back and forth between Stingray and 3ds Max. Yes?
Basically updating the FBX file every importing?
That's basically what it's done. What it's doing, yes. Yeah, and then in the FBX file, if it sees there are only changes to the material, it will update only the material, right? And you can actually define if you want to overwrite the material, because sometimes it can be that you, in Stingray, made some changes to the material already and you don't want to have it being overwritten by 3ds Max. So that's totally up to you. Whoop. All right, so let me go a little bit further. So what I'm doing here, I've been converting some of these geometries over into body objects. So I would be able to export an SAT file. I've imported that into Autodesk simulation to do a basic wind tunnel simulation. So I'm not a simulation guy or a mode flow guy, and I know that's its own huge industry of simulating stuff. But I was at least able to do some basic wind simulation. The reason I've been doing that is, well, for one, now with extension 2 instead of 3ds Max, we're able to import these CFD simulations into Max. And for number two was I wanted to kind of visualize these simulations inside of Stingray. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. So what I'm showcasing, I'm importing a CSV file. So whichever simulation software you're using, as long as you can output this kind of ASCII table file format, a CSV file, you can import that into 3ds Max extension 2 and, well, have it being displayed as some sort of point cloud data. And each of these points has velocity information, vorticity information, pressure, temperature, whatever I've been simulating in simulation CFD, really. So because this point cloud doesn't help me, really, I've just pushed it back into display as box. And now I'm generating a 3D object, which is my plane. And I'm using the vertex information, or the vertex position of the plane to generate this kind of wind flow based on that point cloud that's underneath, right? So that's just a bunch of new modifiers that's available to you inside of extension 2. This could be a teapot. You could also place the plane down here and see how the wind would behave streaming in from down here. This is all, again, based on that point cloud data. What it does, it generates splines for you. So in order to display it in a 3D world like Stingray, I'm just extruding those splines, or I'm generating geometry out of these splines. And while I do that, I also generate mapping coordinates. And that's important because I can do some tricky or some fancy things with that. Because they are mapping coordinates, I could animate how the wind is streaming in by animating an opacity map, right? That's a little bit technical, but yeah, so there we go. And that's the last step. I added a modifier on top of that, also part of extension 2. And that modifier is able to bake down additional information like temperature or pressure into the vertex colors of your geometry, right? So in that case, I've been baking down the velocity. So you can't really see how fast the wind is going by just extruding these splines. But by baking in the velocity information, you see, okay, here it's going really fast. Down here, it's slowing down because it's hitting the wall of the building, etc. So let's go quickly back into 3ds Max. And let me see, these are the splines. I converted them down to an edit poly, but basically what you see here is geometry information based out of these CFD splines with the velocity channel baked down to vertex colors, right? So I'm going to send that selection over into Stingray once again. Same, this is my CFD Dubai. Don't know. Importing, that's good. And as soon as I drop that into my scene, you will see that, well, that color information seems to be gone. But that's basically the same behavior as you would have it inside of 3ds Max if we wanted to render vertex information, vertex color information. If you want to render that inside of 3ds Max, we have to define a material that feeds the vertex color information into the diffuse channel. And it's the exact same behavior inside of Stingray. So we have a default material right here, which we can select and which we can edit. So I'm going to open it up inside of a shader tree, basically, down here. And I might want to readjust its size so you can see in the back. So that's kind of my standard PBR material. That's always being created automatically for you. You don't have to bother about that too much. So here we have our base color, and I can filter for all the available commands. So in that case, I'm going into my vertex inputs, color, and I'm feeding back in the color information into my material. And now I have that kind of color information available right there. I could also go a little bit further, and I've prepared that material just for time's sake, really. Let me see. I should be able to put that on here. Opacity. There we go. Yes. So with the glow, it's more like a Star Wars feeling right now, but basically what I did, I added the vertex color information. I generated a gradient ramp inside of 3ds Max and outputted that as a texture. And then I'm using the UV coordinates that I've been created inside of 3ds Max and just moving that gradient ramp along the those cylinders. Does that make sense? It's kind of how it works. It's not like that we are moving geometry. We're just shifting the UV coordinates along these splines. All right, and that's all done inside of that shader graph that I've been generating early on. So let me think. Yeah, let me hit play for the moment. So we can, at any point, we can test play that kind of level or behavior. Because I started it out of that basic template, I have some controls, some basic controls to move around in my level. If I want to publish that as an iPad, I would have as an iPad, help me, as an iPad application thing, then you would have controls for the iPad as well, right? So here we can walk around. I believe I have, I thought I have, oh yeah, there we go. That's the same cylinder, just a little bit bigger, right? I just changed the radius for these cylinders, and instead of adding a gradient ramp, I added that kind of smoke effect and rotated and moved that along that stuff. And I also added that kind of sound effect. Right? And you can, just by the hit of a button, you can unhide, hide, or unhide all of that. What you could also do, you could go into 3ds Max, and because we have splines right there, we can attach geometry to these splines. So some prefer to have arrows flying around instead of that kind of cylinder, right? So I've done that with characters. And these are like pink unicorn fluffy things, right? And sorry? Some bears. No, yeah, I had fun doing that, but at the same time, you know, it's showing that you can attach particles, and those unicorns, they're flying the exact path of that simulation spline. So you can combine all of that data up to something that doesn't make sense at all, or, you know, attach arrows to that stuff. Bam. And you can have this nerve-wracking music as well. So that's kind of, I think my daughter selected that. That's kind of good. All right. What I didn't show is, the light baking. Of course, you can do light baking. You can do add vegetation, stuff like that. You can even bake down the reflections into reflection probes. So here I have, these reflection probes. So you just scatter them into your scene, and then you hit bake, and it's baking the environment into these reflection probes. And that's storing the reflections for you, right? So you can actually output that kind of quality onto an iPad without having the iPad calculating the reflections in real time, because they're just taking these kind of cube maps. It's game tricks, right? Game magic. They're just taking that. And as soon as you move that thing around, maybe, sometimes these gizmos don't want to be selected. Come on. And in that case, I would guess they don't want. Yeah, if I wanted to move that, it would actually even move the reflection. So if I had more reflectivity in my floor right there, which I can add easily, I believe I would have these reflections moving around as well. All right, let me do a quick time check. Yeah, let's move on to the next project. And this would be, reality capture for edutainment. I didn't have a better title for that, and this is more like a work in progress that I still wanted to share because I found the way it has been generated quite interesting. So I'm using that low-cost drone. It's $800 DJI Phantom 2 with a GoPro attached. I've been flying around next to where I'm living, around that ruin or keep. Is that English? Yeah. Right. I've been capturing a bunch of images, I think around 300 photographs, and I selected 250 out of that. I put that into a product called Project Memento, which is connected to the recap service. So it's a cloud service in the end. And I probably can just show that to you. Right. So you can just put your photographs into Memento. It will kind of analyze these photographs, send it up to the cloud, to a private cloud, so it doesn't share stuff like 123 Catch does. It's not a consumer solution. You can select which kind of quality you want to output. In that case, after a day, I got a message that your 3D model is generated. But that was a day that I could spend on other stuff, right? I've been running Agisoft, another really great reality capture tool, on a second machine, and I believe the machine hung up after 3 days because of RAM restrictions whatsoever. So there are a lot of really good reality capture tools out there, but some of them are more for product capturing and not for landscape capturing. So right in that case, I have this landscape being done in a day. I'm quickly fixing it up a little bit, so I'm deleting the surrounding, the clutter, and it has some tools like measurement, so you can select 2 points on this window, for example, and say, like, okay, that's 1.50 m because I actually did a measure on site, and then it's rescaling all of that into real world scale. It's also able to fix a lot of errors or issues in your scene automatically. So sometimes you have these little particles flying around in your scene, like a lot of these. There's one. And usually you would have to select each of those, delete it out of your scene. Project Memento can do that kind of, for you with a single click. So in the end, I've been outputting a low poly-ish version out of that, so 11 million polygons. And in the end, I figured, okay, maybe I want to reduce that even more. So I put it, instead of 3ds Max, I put it into Mudbox, which is our sculpting solution, which has a retopology engine built in. So you just select your mesh, hit retopologize. I'm going for 300,000 or 30,000? I believe I'm going for 30,000 polygons. But it's also generating a new clean geometry for you. I don't know if you can see that, but here we have a black wireframe that's very evenly distributed along that mesh. And that's basically, the the base mesh, which I took back into 3ds Max. Let me open that up for you. And let me open that up in Stingray as well. Whoop. Oh. There we go. So it should be there any second. So there we go. Yeah, that was the original, already kind of cooked down version of that mesh. And here we have the output out of MCG, not MCG, Mudbox, excuse me. I wanted to go for that kind of low poly cartoony look. I don't have internet connected right here, but we have that new engine inside of 3ds Max 2016, which is called Max Creation Graph, MCG. It's a procedural framework to create your own modifiers, your own geometry, etc. And out of that tool set, I've been using a low poly modifier. And that low poly modifier is kind of breaking up that even distribution without changing your topology. So here I have like a noise setting that I'm going to add to get some sort of a triangulated look, which is randomized throughout your whole scene. So in the end, I ended up with something like that. I baked down the diffuse map into vertex information. I then used Creative Market, which has a direct connection into 3ds Max now. So Creative Market is something like TurboSquid, basically, right? So it's another market that is being run by Autodesk. The good news is that you can create your own market there and offer your assets and sell them. In that case, I think that all these trees were $13. So I've been using them to use object paint along my scene and distributing that on my landscape. Okay, and I also did some very basic path animation with these clouds up there. So really no magic being done. Inside of Stingray though, it already came together as a kind of appealing look. So I really enjoyed working on that one. So there we go. All right, so all I did here is basically I added the vertex color information into the material. And then also, if you have a close look at these trees, they are moving slightly, right? Just a little bit. And that's just another vertex shader inside of these materials. So whatever tree or vegetation object you want to get in, there's a vegetation shader inside of the materials that you just kind of activate. And then this stuff is moving around. Any amount of iOS or Android devices, or even Windows devices, right? So if you have an Android device connected via USB, or if you have an iOS device connected via Wi-Fi, you could live link your editor to that device. Not in this room though, so there is kind of a Wi-Fi restriction, at least last time I checked 30 minutes ago. So I know that's always difficult to show something like that requires Wi-Fi live. So I did a video recording in preparation. So here I have webcam filming the iPad that was laying down next to my laptop. And I'm live linking the iPad to my editor. So and whatever I'm doing now over here is being reflected on my iPad device. So I have full control over stuff like performance. I'm adding a different building or changing some reflection settings, and the performance maybe is going down on my iPad. I can see that immediately. I can also start level designing, and don't think of that to be part of your screen, because usually you have your iPad next to you, so it doesn't block anything, right? It's just for demo purposes. But here I have this little lamppost, and as soon as I hold Shift to copy that, it's being shown in my It's being shown on the iPad as well. So that's really powerful about the Stingray, and it's not streaming like the VGA output of your mobile or desktop graphic board, it's actually running the 3D content on your target device. All right. Quick time check again. Perfect. Good. Okay, going back here, it's basically the same for deployment. So you can deploy an exe file for your Windows. You can deploy an APK package for Android, iOS, generate an IPA file as well. And if you have the SDKs, you can develop for PS4 and Xbox One if you wanted to do that. All right. So let me quickly add some other stuff right there. So here I only added some particle effects, some market stalls, and then I could hit play. And basically walk around in my scene like this. There are the unicorns once again. Can go in here. So here I've just added, some animations that have been prepared inside of 3ds Max. You can take that into account in your application as well. Cool. I mean, that's just rough and very brief because of time restrictions about that project. There's more to it. You can basically go into 3ds Max, and because we have a 3D world that has been scanned, we can, for example, use the new 3D text object and hook it up to real world references. So here I'm measuring the height of that tower basically by these two helpers. So I'm measuring the distance between helper number 1, helper number 2, and I can feed that distance back into my 3D text object. So that's a new 3D text object available in 3ds Max. Just so you know. Okay. Let's hop on to the next scene, though. Yeah, I'm very cautious about the time because I prepared that class to be a 90-minute class. So I'm going to shrink that down to 60 minutes. So we have 20 minutes to go. Revit to Stingray. As I asked, there are quite a lot of people in this room who are using Revit. And there's currently a technology preview that is called Project Expo. And it's a two-parter. So the first part of Project Expo is a data preparation service. So all you need to do is, let's do that quickly. I'm going to show you that button. So I have Revit installed. There is a Project Expo add-on or add-in into Revit. It's going to be found in the add-ins. Makes kind of sense. And that's interesting. I believe I moved the Revit project that I usually show out of these folders. But you find like one button in these add-ins, and that button is called Create Immersive Visualization. So done by Project Expo. And then checks your scene. It automatically can fix the scene for you. So whatever is going wrong here. So here I might have to choose a 3D view. That kind of makes sense. And then you can decide which output you want to aim for. Project X, that's the second part of Project Expo. So it has a player that is able to run on Windows, Android, and iOS. So you can output directly from Revit without going into Stingray into a live player. Or you can output a Stingray project file. And that Stingray project file can be used as kind of the base for your storytelling, for defining your own interactions, right? As soon as you create that, you have these two different options, as I said. So you can export a .expo file. It's going to upload your Revit file to the cloud, process it, and make it available within minutes. So it's really fast currently. I don't know if they're going to change that or something, but it's really like 5 minutes and then it's there. That .expo file is being run by a Project Expo viewer, and as soon as that's being loaded up, I can walk through my scene like that, and I can maximize that. I can define that it should actually take into account the Revit materials. I can orbit around my scene. The sun system is is being exported out of Revit as well, so it's actually the exact position, like geographic position of your sun. You can do that. You have all your Revit views over here, so you can blend between those. And you can go into a tap and go view. So you just tap and go. What it does, it automatically generated a navigation mesh. So it knows where is a door and where is a wall. It also knows what is a door because it has all the Revit categories. So all the doors will open and close automatically for you. And at any point, you can go out of that tap and go mode and just walk around in your scene, like that. And then again, if I approach these doors, they will open up and close again. I can go out of these Revit views, can go open up an info panel, and that info panel allows you to click on different objects, and it's going to display the whole BIM data information that is available or was available inside of Revit, right? So it's exporting all of that. So that's what Project Expo does for you. If you wanted to do the same inside of Stingray, sure, you can do that, right? Just export a Stingray project folder opposed to an Expo viewer file. And I have that exact same project here. So I'm going to open it up. I believe I also have it inside of Max. So yeah, does that mean you don't need Max at all for a Revit to Stingray workflow? Well, not really. For one, Project Expo currently is a technology preview, so it's not kind of commercially viable. You shouldn't base your whole production on a beta. That's what I'm saying. The next thing is, if you wanted to add additional detail like these rocks or water, people walking around, that's where 3ds Max comes back into play, right? But the huge effort of preparing your data, getting rid of flickering or overlapping faces of your walls, etc., all of that is being done by Project Expo for you. And then you can, besides loading it into Stingray, you can still use 3ds Max to add additional detail, right? So here I have that combination of 3ds Max assets plus, it's like stuff, that flag, etc. All that stuff is there. But then again, if you select some of these objects, excuse me, you have the BIM information stored in these objects as well. Okay, and then I can hit play, and yeah, I should be able to interact with my scene. And this is the stuff where it's getting, where it's building on top of that Project Expo, because here I can move around. I have a little bit of user interface elements down there. So here it says if I press 1, I can cycle through different materials. That's something Project Expo wouldn't do for you. Project Expo is a pure player format, right? But what's really nice is the doors will still open and close for you. You don't have to redo that inside of Stingray. And then you can add elements like this, right? Where you approach an object and it's going to give you additional information based on what you decide to do. We can open and close doors that are not defined as Revit objects. So in that case, that's a huge thing. That's not a Revit category, not a Revit standard door. So we animated that inside of Stingray. And we also animated inside of Stingray different kind of usages for these rooms. Same over here. So this is more like an exhibition thing or a classroom, right? And let me see if I hooked up these doors. Open? Oh, perfect. Reception, wedding, yeah, amazing. Cool. So that's kind of the standard stuff that you can easily do inside of Stingray, again, based on that Project Expo environment. We also animated these windmills. That's basically stuff that has been done inside of Stingray and Max. So if you can't animate something in Stingray, because it's not split up in the parts that need to be animated, then you can just select a 3D object, do a right click, and send it back into 3ds Max. So it's not like a dead end solution. You can send data back and forth. Yes, good stuff. So one more thing, because Stingray is a game engine which has gaming roots, we have a lot of game technology built in that is available to you that can look a little bit difficult to wrap your head around the first time you use it. But for example, a very easy to implement element is the navigation system. And the navigation system is calculating, same as in Project Expo, it's calculating where you should be allowed to go. And it's able to pass that information on to computer-generated bots or humans or AI-controlled systems. So we can import, for example, the walk cycle that you generated the class before and hook it up to that navigation system, right? So let me open up that level for you. You will see the nav mesh that I've been talking about is a blue area that is not going to be visible by the viewer, the user in the end. But this is where I kind of define where characters should be able to go. And on top of that, I'm also defining, I'm giving these kind of waypoints. So that's a waypoint over there. I'm just telling these bots, please go walk randomly between these waypoints, but always only on or within that blue area, right? And I also added populate characters. I know they don't look pretty, but they're very easy to generate inside of 3ds Max. Just a one click and then you can send it over. And I've been using Stingray in order to loop that animation because we have that exact same problem. It's not a cycle, right? So the populate animation that has been, in that case, calculated for 300 frames, it would at 300, where it switches between frame 300 and 0, it will go like back into pose and then start playing from there. And then we'll flip again to the initial pose. And I'm using Stingray, a character controller inside of Stingray, to automatically generate that kind of loop for me, for these kind of generic animations. That's kind of working out nicely. Okay, let me play that once more. You will see that we are not only starting that level, but we are also starting that level in a menu system. So you can generate your own user interface, your own menu, and maybe hop into different zones. So if you want to simulate an airport and different terminals and different interiors or exteriors, you could use that kind of user interface to quickly jump between these different scenes. Yeah. So these characters have been downloaded from Adobe Mixamo. Mixamo is a company they acquired. They have their own character generator, which is really solid, really good. And currently, I believe still, Mixamo is running a promotion. So you can register with a free Adobe ID and download all these characters for free, including their walk cycles, etc. So it's a very good starting point to actually go into your scene. And there are also some elements like, collision objects that are not visible, right? VR or using a real-time engine often gives too much freedom, and you want to restrict the user a little bit into just to be able to go into certain areas. And here I'm just using an invisible object that is functioning as a collision, and I've added that caution wet floor sign just to kind of make people aware that this might not be working, or that's exactly working as intended, right? So, yeah. Oh, nice. Good. All right, that's almost the last scene I wanted to show you. One more thing though, and this is the Vive integration. I wasn't able to bring the HTC Vive with me today, and that's always in front of an audience is a very difficult to display an Oculus or show how an HTC Vive would actually work. However, I have the project itself, and I wanted to show you a few more elements on that one. So if I go back into that interior right here, we have a lot of data that has been generated inside of 3ds Max, once again, just exported over into Stingray. And, you know, and there's a lot of stuff that you can do. For example, I've been generating these curtains. I don't know if you can see that. They are quite high density and from a polygon point of view, but I've been animating these. I don't know if you can see that, but it's very subtle animation. It might be the screen though. See that? I was animated. No, I mean, for real, I've been animating that inside of 3ds Max, and I kind of hooked it up to the way Stingray is working. So when you open up these balcony doors, the wind is going to start blowing, and it's going to blow these curtains. And I'm using the character controller inside of Stingray to loop that curtain animation. So that's something I'm going to show you in a second. Then we have stuff like refraction. That's certainly something you can do, right? Or you can, you can do vegetation animation. So in that case, this is all looking very sterile, is that? Or still, basically, right? But we can animate all of these with a vegetation shader as well. Okay, so if I play that, it's going to open up this scene with the menu system. It's going to start up in the city of San Francisco, where you are supposed to interact with your VR controls. Amazing. So here you can fly around. We have some basic traffic stuff going on there. That's not simulated, it's just kind of keyframed inside of 3ds Max. And so we can zoom in and we can go into that apartment. As you can see, it's like kind of empty, right? But you can stream levels into Stingray. So if you wanted to go from big picture into smaller designs, smaller areas, you certainly can do that. And I have to remember, I have to remember the doors. I believe I just hooked them up somewhere. There we go. So it's not like super beautiful, but this is basic stuff that can be done quite quickly inside of Stingray and 3ds Max, right? And then we can just click on stuff. We can lower the curtains. It's not curtains, it's window blinds, I believe, right? It's really up to you which kind of information you want to display in front of your customer, right? And that's kind of the beauty about it. And at the same time, it means that it needs some time to actually, you know, kind of author your scene, to think about what you want to, which story you want to tell, which kind of sections or objects you want to display, right? That's kind of it. So I have some kind of summary slides for you. That's the Oculus Rift. That's what we've seen. So that's kind of the basic Max to Stingray. Just bear in mind that we are exporting the materials out of Max to Stingray. The same goes for Project Expo, Revit to Stingray. It's converting your Autodesk materials into Stingray materials. You can easily add people and more, like the curtain stuff, into Stingray, again, based on your projects. And I've been mentioning a lot of 3ds Max, but in fact, we have the same connection between Maya and Stingray as well. So we have the same Stingray menu and send to an update button out of Maya that we have seen out of 3ds Max. Very good. So here are a few first links. I'm going to make that whole webinar more as a workshop available to you later on in January on my YouTube channel. which is currently empty. So it's going to be populated in like end of January. We're doing a webinar on Stingray there. I'm going to put that recording on their website. If you want to have a look at Project Expo as it is right now, you can register for free at projectexpo.autodesk.com. You know, you just get access to that kind of beta or technology preview, and you're able to export Revit data over into Stingray with a single click. All right. Do you have any questions? And yeah.
Support for augmented reality is the key.
Is there, sorry?
Augmented reality.
Augmented reality. Oh yeah, we're looking into augmented reality at the moment. So we are working with HoloLens, with Microsoft and the HoloLens, as well as Google and Project Tango. And Project Tango is the one that's going or evolved the furthest. So for those of you who don't know, the Project Tango Google tablet, it's kind of a Kinect that's built into the tablet that's enabling you to really measure the depth in a room. So you can use the tablet as a window into virtual reality, which is not exactly AR, I know, right? And there's no AR component built into Stingray right now, right? But you can build your own plugins for Stingray. You can do that, yeah, if that's it. Okay, any more questions? There was, yeah.
Showcase and Lumion.
What happens to showcase at Lumion? I mean, first of all, Lumion is not an Autodesk software, so it's going to be available. You know, it's a very good solution. Showcase, as far as I know, there's not much love being put into that program, which is a shame. I know. I'm still using it to convert some of my Inventor data occasionally, but not to output anymore. So we have these two, like VRED is more like going to more and more replace, I believe, Showcase in the long run, and it's not. I know, right? It's not like a proper replacement. But we have VRED and Stingray as two kind of alternatives for real-time display. Yeah.
You had mentioned that the materials from 3D Max have to be V-Ray.
Yeah.
Does it also work with the standard Autodesk
Yes.
materials library for architecture visualization?
Yes, it does. So if you can convert not only V-Ray materials but also Autodesk material library materials, yes, that's something that's being taken over. I believe we have some problems with Mentoray materials and iRay materials at the moment, but we're working on that. In fact, the 3ds Max team is working on unifying all the materials inside 3ds Max, so you can go back and forth between Corona, iRay, V-Ray, Mentoray in the future.
They went through a lot of trouble synchronizing the materials between Autodesk Architecture, Revit, and 3D Max.
Yes.
And it would be nice to be able to carry that through.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, when you just import a CAD file, you get your Autodesk material library. That's stuff that should be supported by the export button over to Stingray. So, yeah. Yes.
Is there any bugs that we need to look into, because this this stuff is just new in Autodesk, right? It's been acquired recently. So, what are the bugs currently happening?
So
in the workflow, for example, Revit, 3ds Max, Expo, to Stingray, there's any bugs happening?
any bugs, any issues or restrictions at the moment? Oh, okay. So if there are any restrictions or bugs or workflow stoppers, showstoppers at the moment, when I started using Stingray in September, there were a lot of showstoppers. For example, you couldn't take over animations to Stingray without having a bone system applied. So if you wanted to open a door, you would have to link it up to a bone system. Now, like 4 weeks later, in October, they had a new build that does that automatically for you, right? So it's every 4 weeks, every 4 to 6 weeks, there's a new Stingray build with new functionalities. We just released 1.1 with new Oculus SDK support, etc. So it's evolving pretty fast. My recommendation would just be to really update if there's 6 weeks later, if there's a new version for Stingray, because it's not so much about bugs, it's more about workflow stuff. V-Ray, the V-Ray export, that just came in 3 weeks ago. We didn't have that 8 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago, right? So
what about the detailed trainings or tutorials online? Do you have that?
Yes, there is a YouTube learning channel which is not displayed there. So we have two websites really. Let me see. So Live Design, I believe, that's one that's linking to one of the YouTube learning channels. But then there's also the game side of things that is more covering how to get your character into Stingray, how to get interaction done and materials. And there definitely needs to be more learning content. But currently it's all on YouTube. Yeah, it's coming. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time for today and have a great AU Dubai. Cheers.